New spells, and most importantly, new spell rules. Yes, there are brand new spell rules we've never seen in the playtest. Today we're going to talk about the new spellcasting rules and 11 new spells. Well, arguably it's 9 new spells, but we'll get into that. By the way, for those that don't know, I have an early copy of the 2024 Player's Handbook given by Wizards of the Coast. I'm not allowed to show direct screenshots of the book, but I can talk about them, and that's this video. Anyways, welcome to Pack Tactics, bippity boppity boo. So there's a lot I could talk about regarding spellcasting rule changes. Most of them are incredibly minor, so I'm going to talk about the ones that I think are super duper important. Let's start with brand new language. There's a new type of AoE. It's called Emanation. An emanation is an area of effect that extends in a straight line from a creature or an object in all directions. The effect that creates an emanation specifies the distance it extends. An emanation moves with the creature or object that is its origin unless it is an instantaneous or a stationary effect. An emanation's origin isn't included in the area of effect unless its creator decides otherwise. So think Spirit Guardians and stuff like that. I think this is incredibly useful. Next, this one's super important and will probably confuse you. So try to pay attention. One spell with a spell slot per turn. On a turn, you can expend only one spell slot to cast a spell. This rule means you can't, for example, cast a spell with a spell slot using the magic action, and another one using a bonus action on the same turn. But you can cast a spell with a spell slot and cast a cantrip. In the old version, this worked quite differently. Before, you could cast as many leveled spells on your turn as you want with your actions. Like your normal action and then an additional action from Action Surge. However, if you cast a leveled spell with your bonus action, you cannot cast any leveled spell with any other action type on your turn. The order doesn't matter. That old rule confused so many people, even to this day. So I really like this change. It does mean you can't cast 2 leveled spells on your turn, but spoiler alert, Action Surge got nerfed. You can't use the magic action with it. While it was a funny combo back in the day, it wasn't really anything insane. Anyways, this brand new rule. Something very interesting I did notice about the wording is that there is no distinction between cantrips and leveled spells anymore. It only cares about expending spell slots versus not expending spell slots. So if you can, for example, cast a spell without expending a spell slot, like Misty Step once per long rest through Fey Touched, you can cast that Misty Step and a leveled spell with a spell slot afterwards, like Wall of Force for example. So if you're playing the new Ranger with Hunter's Mark, you should keep this in mind. It also works with magic items and stuff like that. But be warned though, everything I just said might not be intentional, because Sorcerer's Quickened spell does care about cantrip versus leveled spells. It says when you cast a spell that has a casting time of an action, you can spend 2 sorcery points to change the casting time to a bonus action for this casting. You can't modify a spell in this way if you've already cast a level 1+ spell on the current turn. Nor can you cast a level 1+ spell on this turn after modifying a spell in this way. I don't know though, guys. I'm fine with it, but it might confuse even more people. I have no idea. I'm curious what you guys think about this. I haven't really fully made up my mind, but for now I'm going with it. Next up, a very small note, but is incredibly important. On page 11, General Rules for Saving Throw says, if you don't want to resist the effect, you can choose to fail the save without rolling. I've talked about this in the playtest, and I still don't like it. I don't like how this interacts with effects that give you some kind of influence over creatures, like planar binding. That's a very obvious one. If a creature is under your control through planar binding, you can force them to not want to resist a recast of planar binding. You keep them under control permanently. This is literally, can I even mention the S word on YouTube? I don't know. Anyways, mind control, permanent mind control. I think that's really bad for the game. They could have put in something like, you cannot force creatures to be willing or wanting of something. I don't know. Next, ritual spells. Very important change. Everyone who has spellcasting has access to ritual casting now. Huge. That is a major buff to casters who didn't have that before. I'll give you an example. Undead Warlock has Phantom Steed. That means Undead Warlock got boosted. Oh yeah, by the way, do note that everyone prepares spells now. Next, now for funny memes. In the old version, the effect that came from casting spells wasn't really defined properly. This is the closest we got back in the day. What is a spell? A spell is a discrete magical effect, a single shaping of the magical energies that suffuse the multiverse into a specific limited expression. In casting a spell, a character carefully plucks at the invisible strands of raw magic suffusing the world, pins them in place in a particular pattern, sets them vibrating in a specific way, and then releases them to unleash the desired effect. In most cases, all in the span of seconds. Desired effect is broad, and tons of people I hang out with have memed this into oblivion. Oh, Druidcraft, well, I desire it to work like the text under Meteor Swarm. Of course, nobody runs it that way, but it's a classic meme my friends bring up all the time. As for the new book, it does have rules for spell effects. It says the effects of a spell are detailed after its duration entry. Those details present exactly what this spell does, which ignores mundane physical laws. Any outcomes beyond those effects are under the DM's purview. Typically, they deal with targets, saving throws, attack rolls, or all three, each of which is detailed below. That's basically all the changes that are worth talking about. Oh, wait. There's one more thing, and this didn't change. Cantrips are still based on your full level, not your class level. This was something they played around with in the playtest, but it didn't make it. Anyways, let's move on to the new spells. We're gonna start with the 3 new cantrips. First is Elementalism, a new cantrip available for druids, sorcerers, and wizards. I'm gonna be honest, I don't feel like reading this because all I see in this spell is fluff. It's kinda cool, I guess, but there's nothing... I can't think of anything interesting to do with this cantrip. Next, Sorcerous Burst, a sorcerer-exclusive cantrip. I'm gonna read this one. This one is interesting. You cast Sorcerous Energy at one creature or object within range. Make a ranged attack roll against the target. On a hit, the target takes 1d8 damage of a type you choose. Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, Poison, Psychic, or Thunder. If you roll an 8 on the d8 for this spell, you can roll another d8 and add it to the damage. When you cast this spell, the maximum number of these d8s you can add to the spell's damage equals your spellcasting ability modifier. And then it scales up at level 5, 11, and 17. Very interesting cantrip. Now, does this increase in damage make it worth casting over Firebolt? The answer is not really. Its expected damage is worse. What about Ray of Frost? Well, you do like 14% extra damage if we assume a +5 spellcasting ability modifier. This really ranges between about 1 or 2 extra DPR across all levels, with the opportunity cost of losing out on the -10 movement speed penalty on a hit. This cantrip is not worth it at all in my opinion, but I do appreciate it. It's really unique. You're probably gonna have a lot of fun using this. Final cantrip, Starry Wisp, available for bards and druids. To save time, I'm not going to read this to you. It's not really that interesting, but I do think this is a good addition to bards and druids. Those classes didn't really have any good spammable damage option. I can tell you for a fact that I'm definitely going to be casting this. I approve. Now we're jumping into the proper spells, starting with Arcane Vigor, which is available for sorcerers and wizards as a 2nd level spell. It's a bonus action use. You tap into your life force to heal yourself. Roll 1 or 2 of your unexpended hit point dice, and regain a number of hit points equal to the roll's total plus your spellcasting ability modifier. Those dice are then expended. Upcast, the number of unexpended hit dice you can roll increases by 1 for each spell slot level above 2. While this is one of the only healing spells for these specific classes, I honestly think this is not worth prepping at all. This heals you for like 10 HP, and 1 hit basically removes that. Next, a new smite for paladins, Shining Smite. It's basically a rework of Branding Smite. So you could argue that it's not really that new. 2nd level spell, bonus action, which you take immediately after hitting a creature with a melee weapon or an unarmed strike. Concentration up to 1 minute. The target hit by the strike takes an extra 2d6 radiant damage from the attack. Until the spell ends, the target sheds bright light in a 5-foot radius. Attack rolls against it has advantage, and it can't benefit from the invisible condition. Upcast, the damage increases by 1d6 for each spell slot level above 2. This spell is awesome. It's really, really good. It's one of the best smite spells in the game, period. Granting advantage without a saving throw is insane, and the damage it grants itself is not bad either. Do take into account that smite spells should not be used sparingly. Don't spend all your spell slots on them quickly. I think you should. Well, if your resources doesn't really matter, then sure. Next, now we're at 4th level, Font of Moonlight, available for bards and druids. Action cast, concentration up to 10 minutes. A cool light wreathes your body for the duration, emanating bright light in a 20-foot radius, and dim light for an additional 20 feet. Until the spell ends, you have resistance to radiant damage, and your melee attacks deal an extra 2d6 radiant damage on a hit. In addition, immediately after you take damage from a creature you can see within 60 feet of yourself, you can take a reaction to force the creature to make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the creature has the blinded condition until the end of your next turn. I think this spell kinda sucks. Sure, it's got 3 things going for it here, but none of them are particularly strong for their spell slots. And even combining all of those things, it sucks. It's a 4th level spell. Now, to be fair, a Moon Druid could arguably get something out of this at later levels. But I think you're better off casting Conjure Minor Elementals, which I'll hopefully show in the next video. I don't know. Now for 5th level spells, starting with Jalarzi's Storm of Radiance. It's available to Warlocks and Wizards. It's an action cast, has a range of 120 feet, concentration up to 1 minute. You unleash a storm of flashing light and raging thunder in a 10-foot radius, 40-foot high cylinder, centered on a point you see within range. While in this area, creatures have the blinded and deafened conditions, and they can't cast spells with a verbal component. When this storm appears, each creature in it must make a Constitution saving throw, taking 2d10 radiant damage and 2d10 thunder damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. A creature also makes this save when it enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn or ends its turn there. A creature makes this save only once per turn. Upcast, the radiant and thunder damage increase by 1d10 for each spell slot level above 5. This is way too small to be useful. Like, sure, it's web-sized, but they can just walk out of this. And it's not like it's difficult terrain. It's 20 feet movement at most. Now, to optimize it, you could make it work with Wall of Force to stop someone from teleporting out of the Wall of Force. But this spell only lasts for a minute, so it's not enough to microwave with it. I don't think it's worth it at all. This spell sucks. Next, your landy is Regal Presence, accessible to bards and wizards. 5th level spell, action, concentration up to 1 minute. You surround yourself with unearthly magistry in a 10-foot emanation. Whenever the emanation enters the space of a creature you can see, and whether a creature you can see enters the emanation or ends its turn there, you can force that creature to make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 4d6 psychic damage and has the prone condition, and you can push it up to 10 feet away. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage only. A creature makes a save only once per turn. This is a way worse version of Spirit Guardians. It doesn't last very long, it's very expensive. Sure, you can argue that these two classes normally don't get Spirit Guardians, but Wizard and Bard have more important things to pick. And Bard at 10th level gets magical secrets, so they can just pick Spirit Guardians if they want to. You know the affected creature speed is halved in the area part of the spell in Spirit Guardians? That is not a save. Everything in this spell is a save. And lastly, Spirit Guardians upcast to this level just does more damage. And Spirit Guardians Emanation is just bigger too. It's 15 feet. This is only 10 feet. Anyways, next, 6th level spell, Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron. A new Tasha spell. It's available to only warlocks and wizards. This is an out of combat spell, and it's got a 500 gold price tag on it. You conjure a claw-footed cauldron filled with bubbling liquid. The cauldron appears in an unoccupied space on the ground within 5 feet of you, and lasts for the duration. The cauldron can't be moved and disappears when the spell ends, along with the bubbling liquid inside it. The liquid in the cauldron duplicates the properties of a common or an uncommon potion of your choice, such as a healing potion. As a bonus action, you or an ally can reach into the cauldron and withdraw 1 potion of that kind. The potion is contained in a vial that disappears when the potion is consumed. The cauldron can produce a number of these potions equal to your spellcasting ability modifier. When the last of these potions is withdrawn from the cauldron disappears and the spell ends. Potions contained from the cauldron that aren't consumed disappear when you cast the spell again. For warlocks, this is not a worthwhile pick with Mystic Arcanum. But on a wizard, this is incredible with downtime, as you can make things like potions of force resistance or oil of slipperiness. If you're about to go in a dungeon, you can pop one of these and it'll probably last the entire dungeon. Of course, you can only carry 4 or 5 of these potions, but that should be enough for the entire party pretty much. This is an insanely good spell, so I highly recommend you pick this up. Next, 7th level, Power Word Fortify, available to bards and clerics. Action, 60-foot range. You fortify up to 6 creatures you can see within range. The spell bestows 120 temporary hit points, which you divide among the spell's recipients. While temporary hit points are arguably not as useful as actual hit points, as they do not stack, this is quite some levels below the very comparable mass heal. I think it's a very nice option for clerics especially, but I would not recommend splitting the temporary HP to more than 2 targets. Last spell, it's an 8th level spell. It looks kinda like Feeble Mind, but it's slightly different. I get why they changed the name. It doesn't really give someone a feeble mind anymore. Anyways, Befuddlement, available for bards, druids, warlocks, and wizards. Action cast 150 feet, instantaneous. You blast the mind of a creature that you can see within range. The target makes an intelligence saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 10d12 psychic damage and can't cast spells or take the magic action. At the end of every 30 days, the target repeats the save, ending the effect on a success. The effect can also be ended by the Greater Restoration, Heal, or Wish spell. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage only. Yeah, so a creature's intelligence is no longer reduced. Rest in peace! Feeble Mind plus Awaken combo. You were a really funny meme. Well, technically, Feeble Mind wasn't replaced, although it's kind of debatable. I don't know if people will allow both of them to coexist. We'll see. Regardless, the spell has traded an intelligence reduction with a lot more damage. I kind of like the change, but I don't think it's very powerful. That's it for all the brand new spells. There's still more like Sleep being nerfed, that's basically a new spell now, and stuff like that. But that will be a different video. And hopefully it will be the next video, I don't know. The script for that video is like 30 32 pages long. It's insane. I've never had a script that long before. But anyways, hopefully that comes out very soon. We'll see. Stay tuned. End of video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope I earned your subscription and maybe your support on Patreon. Patrons get new videos early, so you might want to sign up for that. It's up to you. Anyways, bye-bye!